All the good had been sucked from them years ago, and they prowled restlessly in their junky brown sockets as if they might leap out at any second from behind their greasy bangs to set fire to the chandelier, dragging the creature's wiry frame behind them in a blaze of ripped denim and impertinent youth. Of course, Jerry didn't know that the creature's name was Alex Wimbledon, and that this name had been a fixture in the hotel's most esteemed and secret high tippers logbook for the past 3 years of his residence. In this hotel, he was a man for whom the slack was cut. When he was down, you gave Mr. Wimbledon his first shot on the house. You chatted Mr. Wimbledon up and tried to look at things from Mr. Wimbledon's perspective. Although like the rich American woman, but unbeknownst to the hotel, he also used a false name, his real name being Alger Wilson. In the unlikely event of being armed with a true serum blow dart on that particular work shift, you might even succeed in penetrating into Alger or Alex's world. You'd see yourself sitting there in dirty clothes for the first time in your life, filth from the Bronx still deep in your pores, under your nails, clinging lecherously to every inch of your body. Your family is dead, murdered by the government you suspect. Your hotel bill is due, and all your money has been stolen by a French spy dressed as a hot dog. A lesson to stay away from the Mood Elixir bars near the UN building. Swedish bank account frozen, should have gone with the Swiss. And now this gray-haired old verse. Of course, Jerry, being new, didn't know to do any of this, and so launched out from behind the bar in a thunderous racket the moment Ernie's crooning seized into a gasp of horror at the thing glistening on his finger. A flock of martini glasses took off from a roost of old ladies in deference to Jerry's bulbous gut chugging recklessly over the counter. Tensions were high. Confused soccer moms took battle stances for the first time in their lives. Professor Winchester, only moments ago, enjoying a spot of afternoon cognac over in a secluded corner, tried to do the same from his wheelchair, but only managed to tense his shoulders and spill liquor on his crotch. Adrenaline glinted off the chandeliers and slowed time. All eyes followed the swarthy behemoth of a bartender charging epically towards Alex, still unmoved and smirking devilishly at his triumph over lounge music. If you were still chummed up with Mr. Wimbledon at the time, you'd have known he was too addled with mood inhalants and the deep rust of despair to react with any kind of expediency, as though Jerry's hulking arms, smelling of dish soap and brandy, came upon him like a wet diaper to a baby's nap. Alex was pissed. Things went fuzzy for a soon-named friend. There was a yelling, a locking of muscles, a grating of hot breath and stubble, sweaty tentacles dragging his drug-addled body while boots kicked, grinding grease from the Bronx into some ornate Indian rug, footsteps hammering from all over like Frankenstein's drum set, and then from some benign portion of Godhead, the quivering voice of Mrs. Emerson arriving on a white horse, whinnying Alger Wilson's pseudonym over and over, and something to the effect of, "Don't you know who this is? This is Mr. Wimbledon. Mr. Wimbledon." This didn't end all the shuffling and dragging by any means, but it made it a great deal milder. The yelling subsided to concerned whispers. There was a portion that Alger caught, breaking through his barrage of groans and chortles like a trickle of confused sunshine. "Shh, keep this quiet. Don't you know who secretly checked in today? She's only here because of our reputation for being discreet." The door slammed, presumably the one to his room, to which the veins in his temples pinched one last time. All this action had stirred up his liver, and now the day's toxins were loose once more, rallying into some malignant ogre directly behind his eyes. With all the commotion suddenly decapitated by the slamming door, there was nothing left but the scolding hum of the room's air conditioner to accent all the nuances of these poisons, lighting stinky matches under his optic nerve. Alex Wimbledon, whose real name had once been Alger Wilson, squirmed against the stiff flower-printed blankets and sunk into himself to find sleep. If you were the saintliest of hotel staffers and had used your true serum dart, you'd understand that life on the lam, and God knows it wasn't his fault that he was on it, had been hard on the young man, and might even sigh sympathetically over his smelly, tortured body lying there in the fetal position. You certainly wouldn't call him a creature, knowing how good-natured his former life had been, striving for that artistic jewel at the bottom of a cup of coffee and the last page of a journal, wandering nature preserves at midnight with his head to the stars, spreading enthusiasm like well-engineered smallpox to all his friends. You might even call him ruggedly handsome, almost noble in a sort of drug-addicted Han Solo-ish type way. So his hair was a little wild, and at certain angles he looked like a schizophrenic Muppet. You might, too, if the government had hunted down your family, and you'd just once taken your father's infamous genetic cocktail. The fact still remained that his most recent girlfriend, Nancy, had said after going gooey-eyed over his then most recent poem, and, well, smoking a potent joint too, that he looked at the good riff on his Sony cyber suit before his next gig at a dive bar. It had been 4 years since he'd taken his father's precious genetic drugs and documents, changed his name, and slid into petrified hiding. Now he'd outlived Jimi Hendrix by a good 3 months, his jawline widening to that almost 30 look. His eyes had kept their devilish shine, but had grown fat with permanent circles from all the times his thoughts had trembled at the groan of a nearby elevator, or the unexpected creak of a door that might hold behind it an assassin's silencer, cold and ready for him like some horny shark fin. Add 3 parts ravenous drug appetite to the mix and you'd get what Alger, if he were awake and sober, would call the union of a tornado with a field of outhouses. It's not all bad, though. Despite the typhoon of feces and shredded toilet seats that had become his life, Alger doggedly maintained his love for the zany in an attempt to keep hold of his former identity, and this brought him strange solace. His former identity, as wide-eyed Alger Wilson, would still believe humans were capable of more psychological awareness than most are conditioned to think in. Fusion leagues, to commit acts of high weirdness, such as erecting 20-foot maxi-pad sculptures of men sodomizing poodles in Central Park, and taping pictures of genital warts and Count Chocula to Planned Parenthood clinics across Manhattan. Of course, this and his dicey womanizing had created an unwisely high profile for Alger and had led him like a sewer ladder covered in roses to his recent rendezvous with a hot dog man. He'd been sitting in a shadowy corner of Club Poseidon late last Tuesday night when the whole thing had sprung on him. It'd been a bad Tuesday from the get-go. After his first morning inhale of Passion 36, he'd begun to hallucinate the silhouetted face of a man, neither benevolent nor sinister, watching him from the upper left corner of his vision. The overlay of the shadowy face hadn't affected anything directly, but made Alger distinctly nervous he was losing his mind. On top of that, he'd ended up at Club Poseidon, a place he hated. And not because it was an illegal mood elixir bar, he loved those, but because of the shady methods and characters that kept it hidden from the authorities. If it hadn't been for his buddies in the cybersuit band Ether Spit, he'd never be there in the first place. But when your friends are offering to buy you a few inhales of the new and much coveted Pensive 2.1 on a restless and boisterous evening, you go there anyways if you're Alger. He'd been in the midst of discussing last year's brief and sordid war with Syria and the new Confusion League project to wrap all the mailboxes on 35th Street in dental floss and vat-grown beef with his partner in crime, Nick Escher, when a 5'9" hot dog approached them. "Hey guys, I like your music. You should try this new inhalant," said the hot dog in a subtle but clearly French accent, holding out a wide mood dispenser towards Alger with an inviting bun-like arm. Using his ocular implant, Alger scanned through the hot dog hologram and saw a meek-looking European man in his 30s wearing a hologram belt underneath. Ever since holographic clothing had come into vogue, there had been a subculture of mostly young people who had taken it upon themselves to dress as holographic food. And seeing such things as giant hot dogs or man-sized ice cream sundaes walking out of the Empire State Building, however distasteful, was not an uncommon sight in Alger's time. Before thanking him and taking the inhalant, which at the time appeared to do absolutely nothing to his consciousness, Alger had also scanned to see if the Frenchman had any law enforcement chips on his being, and had seen nothing. It wasn't until the next day, after he awoke with a sudden jolt, to recall that he had indeed seen the square of the hot dog man's badge highlighted in red from his ocular chip. He'd heard of technology that could block information picked up by an ocular chip for several hours, but that caliber of gadgetry wasn't available to just any flatfoot, or even most members of the FBI. When the bank chip in his arm scanned his funds as frozen, he knew he'd just stumbled into a whole new layer of thick molasses dread. The Frenchman was most certainly a high-ranking spy of some sort, and had used the inhalant as a means of chemically infiltrating his bank chip to steal its information. Information that would give whoever the spy was working for his real name. Now all the money from his hit single Kill the Robot and the worldwide newsphere was in the hands of some intelligence thugs, and the fabled gun silencer of his nightmares had doubtlessly smelled his blood stinking up the city sea, and had begun to circle ever closer to his discreet hotel room. Still, at least the silhouetted face in the corner of his vision had disappeared. But we should really stop now. Alger has a very sensitive mind, and you can bet he can feel you poking your dirty little meat hooks into his sore brain. Just look at him wriggling there on the bed, the poor bastard. We should really just let him glide peacefully into a dream for the moment. That's what he's searching for right now. Let's wish him one of his favorites, one with Captain Borculus in it, perhaps. Those are the dreams he likes best. They tend to give him a little hope. That's it. Yeah! Captain Borculus is